It's good seeing you again.
Still look forward to working with you, John. I mean that.
You want a coffee?
Well, I don't know.
Oh, my fucking Christ.
Isn't it funny that the most Italian Guido show is considered the greatest show of all time?
I'll tell you something. New York is the greatest fucking city in the world.
Is it still, or is it just overrated? Or is it actually that good? And I have to say, yes, it's one of the greatest shows of all time. I mean, first of all, it was one of the shows that pioneered having episodes be like a movie. The sitcom era was over. And yes, I know before some know-it-all says, well, there are still sitcoms. Yeah, I know, but they're made for the old boomers. They're made for the old boomers to be like, oh, they're laughing with me. People might think, oh, this is just another Godfather, Goodfellas. No, this is a show about a father who is a part of the mafia, but he's a vulnerable man who is paranoid and severely depressed. The show begins with Tony Soprano staring at this naked female statue at the therapist's waiting room. And to Tony, this statue is judging him. That stare he gives that statue shows us he's not this tough guy. He looks very tough, but that stare shows how vulnerable he truly is. So next, Tony is speaking to his new therapist, Dr. Melfi. And he tells her how his life is, and we see Tony just going outside and getting the newspaper from his front yard, and he tells Dr. Melfi how he is very uncertain about the mafia era. He thinks he got to it too late, when the mafia aren't a big deal anymore. He's already bashing himself and being insecure about himself. And when he goes to the back of the house by the pool area, he gets very happy when he sees a family of ducks go to his pool. To Tony, this is very special. It's one of the things that actually makes him very happy. These family of ducks are very important to Tony because he sees what he wished he could have. A happy, healthy family he can't have. And to his family, they just think it's weird that he enjoys seeing those ducks. So then Dr. Melfi asks, what does he do for a living? And he tells her that he works at a wasting disposal. Ha ha, how convenient. And and Tony tells her how his cousin Christopher picks him up. And while driving, Tony gets annoyed Christopher hasn't gotten money from this guy. And Tony has Christopher go to this guy's workplace. And they see him. And then Dr. Melfi says to Tony that she's a therapist and keeps what they talk about confidential. But if a crime is committed, she has to tell the authorities. She's basically telling him that she knows who he is, because mostly everyone at Newark knows who Tony Soprano truly is. And he says he and this guy just got some coffee, but actually Tony tells Christopher to get the guy. When Tony sees Christopher failing to just catch the guy, he goes to the driver's side and starts to chase the guy with his car until he hits the guy with the car. And you see Tony smile because he has a purpose right now. And also, he's just a lunatic also. So after the guy gets hit, Tony gets out of the car and acts like a guy, and acts to the guy like a concerned citizen until Tony starts to beat up the guy and telling Christopher to also beat up the guy. And Tony warns the guy to better get his money or something worse will happen to this guy. And to me, this is such a great scene, but also funny, because there's scared and concerned bystanders, and Tony just doesn't care. So Tony sits outside this deli with his work pals. And they tell him that Tony's uncle, my favorite character because how fucking crazy the uncle is. Anyway, they tell Tony that his uncle is thinking of killing a man at Tony's friend's restaurant. And Tony knows this will have the crime family look bad and have the FBI after them. So at first, Tony tries telling his uncle to not assassinate this guy at Artie's restaurant. And this one simple act from Tony really makes Uncle Junior mad. He tells Tony he's not the leader of the family. So next, Tony goes to his mother's house, and this is when we see the real Tony, how vulnerable he is. He greets her. She tells him to lock the door. He tries telling his mother to tell Uncle Junior to not take out this guy at Artie's restaurant. She says how much of a saint Tony's father was. Tony gets her one of those CD radios. She bashes him. He tries dancing with her. She yells at him. His mother dislikes Tony for no reason. Tony knows his mother hates him, doesn't love him, but he still wants her approval of him. He wants her to care for him, but he knows that'll never happen. But it's like he has Stockholm Syndrome because Tony cares for his mother and he wants the best for her. So then Tony has a bunch of people at his house and is grilling out because it is his son's Anthony's birthday. And while Tony is grilling some meat, he sees the ducks fly away. His one true thing keeping him happy is gone. Seeing that happy family he wants is gone now. He's hurt, and he's so hurt, he gets a panic attack and falls to the ground. So next, Tony is at a MRI room, and he's alone there until Camilla, his wife, visits him. And that's when we see their toxic relationship, where instead of being peaceful with each other, they're arguing while he's about to get an MRI, by the way. So at the strip club where the headquarters are, I mean, why not have business and have fun when you're done? So sounds like a good idea to me. Anyway, Tony and his crew are talking about what to do about Uncle Junior. And the Hesh tells Tony, why doesn't he just have Artie go somewhere with some excuse? And to Tony, that was to give tickets of going to some vacation place. And Artie agrees and takes the tickets. And then Tony has one of his men turn the ovens on, and have Artie's restaurant burned to the ground. And again, Tony thinks this is good for everyone. He thinks he's caring about others, but he's literally just ruined a man's career for his own benefits. Tony and Camilla are at a restaurant having dinner, and Tony tells her he has to confess to her about something. And Camilla gets very defensive, like he's going to confess he's cheating on her, because from her expression, he's done that before numerous times. But no, he tells her that he's taking antidepressant pills, and he's seeing the therapist again. And she gets very happy for him, like she's seeing the old happy Tony again that disappeared a long time ago. So when he's seeing Dr. Melfi, she asks him if he's depressed. And Tony tries dodging the question by trying to distract her by asking her things, and she just asked again, is he depressed? And he finally talks about, yeah, he thinks he's depressed, and he gets mad at her and walks out abruptly because Tony doesn't like being vulnerable. He doesn't like to admit he's sad. That's not being that tough Italian American. He even says to her, he's the sad clown that has to smile because he doesn't want his friends to know he's depressed. This episode starts out with Tony and his crew at the headquarters, and they're watching a segment of John Gotti on the TV about how the mafia are nothing anymore and what was their downfall. And while everyone is offended by what they're saying, you can see on Tony's face him agreeing with what they're saying on TV, because remember on episode 1, his fear is he got to the mafia game too late. So next at night, this truck is driving and he stops because there's a man waving him down to stop. And so the truck driver stops, and that's when Christopher, with a gun, tells him to get out, and they beat him up. Classic Italian greeting. And they take the CDs that was from that truck. Then Anthony Jr. tells Camilla, his mom, that how his teacher's car was stolen and it was a Saturn. Shit, I wouldn't worry. Saturns was the Walmart of cars. That teacher should be happy it was stolen. Get a better car. So Camilla asks Tony if he can help the teacher to get back his car. And at first Tony doesn't care about the situation until he asks Anthony what grade he has at history class. And he tells Tony he's failing the class. And that's when Tony agrees to help find the car. And Camilla tells him that's not what she meant, and he just chuckles and dances with Camilla, showing the true Tony Soprano isn't this mean mafia guy. Even if he does act like that, his true self is a man that cares about his family. So then Christopher at the strip club tells the guys he's got the CDs so they can sell it. So Tony calls to check on his mother, and again he greets her, and she just gets annoyed that he doesn't call enough. And at the background of her, the oven stove sets on fire. She doesn't even notice. She's just a crazy boomer. And she freaks out, and the dumb, crazy lady makes it worse when she spills water on a grease fire. I mean, that's just not common sense at all. And Tony can't do anything about it, and he tells her to call 911 and get out of the house. And she's not listening. She just focuses on the fire and yelling. Then on Tony's end, one of the guys tells Tony there's a business call he's been waiting for. And then Big Pussy, that's one of the characters, one of his crew members, asks Tony what the teacher's license plate is, just really showing all the stress he gets and how he's blind to it. So Camilla is at Tony's mother's house to check on her after the fire, and Camilla even tells her she can stay at Tony and her house. And the mother gets offended and thinks she's not welcome to the house. Not welcome to their house. And then we actually get a glimpse at a mother. We actually get a glimpse at the mother actually have care for Tony a little bit when she asks if he still has those panic attacks. And you actually see she has a regretful expression. So Tony stops by his mother's house, and when he gets there, there's a home nurse. And Tony greets her, and the nurse tells the mother it's Tony. Then out of nowhere, because Tony is unintentionally racist, because he tells the black nurse that don't bring guns at his mother's house. Because Tony thinks black people always carries a gun. He tells her that so normally, like it wasn't offensive, because he doesn't think it's offensive saying that. Then when speaking to his mother, she says that she thinks the nurse is stealing because the mother is actually an offensive racist, and she knows it. And Tony tells her the nurse probably didn't steal anything, and she probably gave it away and forgot. And the mother says she doesn't want a nurse, and Tony actually puts his foot down and tells her no. Then Tony meets up with Uncle Junior. Then Tony meets up with Uncle Junior at the pork place outside, and Uncle Junior is mad that Christopher took those CDs because the truck belongs to one of Uncle Junior's business guys. And Uncle Junior only listens to himself, as Tony says to him, Christopher had no idea, and they agree on bringing back those CDs and paying that businessman. While Big Pussy, yes, that's his name, alright? That's his nickname. You immature people watching this. While Big Pussy and Paulie are at this espresso place to look for the guy that stole the teacher's car, Paulie can't get over how he's so mad that Italians didn't think of creating espresso place, and how he can't get over it. Something so simple makes him so angry. So since Tony's mother is super old, she really doesn't know how to drive. She drives very slow and drops off a friend of hers, and instead of backing up, She drives forward, hitting her friend, and that was the last straw for her, because while they were at the hospital, the doctor advised Tony that she can't live by herself anymore. She's too unstable. Next, Tony sees Dr. Melfi, and he tells her about the mother situation. And Dr. Melfi says that Tony is scared of his mother, and she has power over him. And Tony denies it. And Dr. Melfi asks, well, tell her a happy memory he has of his mother. And he tells a memory of his friend tripping. He tells a memory of his father tripping downstairs and getting hurt, and his mother laughing at him. So was some of the other Sopranos family members on this memory. He couldn't even say a happy memory of his mother, and he gets offended and tells Dr. Melfi that his mother's a hard worker and she's a nice old lady, and how he feels bad and blames himself for how his mother is now. So Christopher and his friend are at this dance club, and they're talking about a truck of suits, and they complain about Uncle Junior and how unfair it is on how they are treated, and Christopher says it's not fair when they listen and they don't go anywhere. Tony is back at his mother's house. She's saying how she needs to get rid of her stuff since she'll probably die, and Tony tells her she's not going to die and needs to think about the future. And to show how the mother really doesn't care about Tony, she gave her good jewelry to a cousin they barely know. She barely knows. And he gets offended because she only gave Tony a recliner. And Tony tells her she needs to stop giving away things, and she acts like he's being rude, and she tells him she's not going to the nurse. She's not going to the nursing home. And Tony tells her yes, she is. And then she plays the guilt game, and like Tony, like it's Tony's fault this is happening. The friend tells Christopher to help him steal the suits at this truck, and Christopher denies it, tells him he needs to start listening to his bosses before something happens to him. And the friend is disappointed, and the next day stops the truck driver with the suits, and they screw up. I mean, those Guidos, you know how they are. And majorly, when one of the robbers drops his gun on the road, and friendly fires and kills the truck driver. And Tony and Camilla and his mother are at the nursing home, and he signs the papers to have her stay at the nursing home. And Uncle Junior calls, and Tony can't talk right now, and that one decision would trickle down to major consequences. And Christopher calls Tony and tells him about the botched robbery attempt. And Tony tells Christopher and his friend to bring back the suits to Uncle Junior's businessman and tell Uncle Junior about it. So Tony is at his mother's house just packing the rest of the stuff, and he looks at old pictures and family pictures, and he has another panic attack because, again, he blames himself for having his mother go to the nursing home. And Dr. Melfi tells him that Tony has self-hatred towards his mother. And Dr. Melfi tries explaining what she means by that, but Tony doesn't listen, except, again, lash out at Dr. Melfi and walks out because he can't admit he does hate his mother. Tony's at the waiting room, and he stares at this painting of a barn, and he asks about it to Dr. Melfi, and he says, where did she get it? And he thinks it's a psychological test, like a Rorschach. But she just got the painting because she thought it looked good. But to Tony, this painting gives him dread, sadness. And next they're at the hospital room where the head of the crime family is sick with cancer. And Tony and the guys visit, and Silvio tells Tony about this Jewish guy needs their help about this motel, and Hirsch warns Tony not to deal with it. Tony and Camilla visit Artie and his wife's new house, and Artie tells Tony how the insurance isn't helping Artie because they think he was the one who burnt down his own restaurant. And you see Tony having guilt about it because of the consequences it led to. Then Tony and his crew meet up with the Jewish guy and the Jewish father tells Tony about how this guy abuses his daughter and how it's mocking their religion. And the Jewish guy tells Tony how the husband is taking 50% of the profit, and Tony wants 20 and how Tony wants 25% if they help. And they agree to the terms. Silvio and Polly visit the motel and confront the husband, and they tell the husband to listen to the father and stop with the 50%. And the husband disagrees to no terms, and Meadow, Tony's daughter, goes to Christopher's apartment to ask for Speed. And Christopher denies her the offer, and Adriana, Christopher's girlfriend, tells Christopher he should just give them Speed than them being poisoned by Speed being laced by the stranger they would get it from. Then Tony visits Dr. Melfi, and he sees that she has a degree in medicine, and asks her about if she thinks Jackie, the head of the crime family with cancer, will survive. And she asks what cancer he has, and Tony tells her it's intestine cancer. And when she doesn't have the answer, he gets mad and rants about how he will survive. And he gets mad at her because she doesn't have the answers, because Jackie is a genuine friend and doesn't want him to die, and he's not ready to grieve again. Silvio and Polly have kidnapped the Jewish husband, and the husband claims how he's actually a good husband, and he gives his wife everything she asks for. And that's why he deserves the 50%. And Tony arrives at the pork place where they're holding the Jewish husband, and he's still disagreeing with Tony and his crew until Tony calls Hirsch, and Hirsch told him not to deal with the Jews, and he recommends to threaten to cut, and Hirsch recommends Tony to threaten the husband to cut off his balls, and Hirsch is sure the husband will agree to the deal then. So Tony visits Jackie at the hospital, and Tony tells him how they own a motel now, and Jackie is just delusional and speaking nonsense. And right there, Tony realizes that this is it. His friend is actually going to be dead. And Uncle Junior is speaking to Tony's mother and talking about how he's annoyed by what Christopher and that friend did. And the mother suggests Christopher needs a talking to, but the friend, he's going to be a goner too. I'm telling you, his mother is an evil witch. Tony is speaking to Dr. Melfi about his dying friend, and Tony said he's not afraid to die if you died doing something like fighting a war. And Tony can't understand how you die for nothing. And she asks him if he's like Frankenstein, a thing that likes humanity and likes human emotions. Remember how I said Tony not answering Uncle Junior's call had its consequences? So Christopher gets scared with a gun pointed at him, not dead, just a warning from Uncle Junior. Christopher's friend, Brendan, not so much. My man was just enjoying a bubble bath. I mean, who takes a bubble bath? But he gets shot to death. That's just embarrassing. I mean, how embarrassing. Getting shot while being naked. How embarrassing. Just from that one call Tony ignored, it trickled down to massive consequences. So Tony has a dream of him being at the therapy session with Dr. Melfi. She's acting weird, not speaking, and Tony is checking her out. And then he sees his friend Hirsch walking by the window, and he sees this, freaks out and asks why Hirsch was here, and she says he goes here at 3. So Tony stands up and goes to the waiting room where he sees his friend and crew members there at the waiting room staring at him, and he asks Dr. Melfi what is going on, and it's his mother wearing a wig. Yeah, terrifying. And then Tony wakes up. This dream was his subconscious fears, his friends judging him for seeing a shrink, and the Major Deep subconscious of his fear of his mother. So then Christopher gets out of the hospital. He's got one of those neck casts, and he's with Adriana. And Christopher is generally scared, even going outside, because he thinks Tony is watching him and thinks Tony was the one who set up the attack on him, even if it was Uncle Junior. And Christopher and Adriana go to Brendan's apartment where they find his dead body, and this makes Christopher more paranoid of Tony. Next, Tony is going to see Dr. Melfi again. So when he's walking down the hospital hallway, he sees Silvio, and he freaks out and hides from him. And Tony finds out Silvio was just seeing the dentist, again showing how paranoid and how Tony's fears are looming over him. Christopher and Adriana go to pick up Meadow, and he confronts her about the speed situation because he thinks Tony set up the attack. And Meadow tells him her father, Tony, is worried where Christopher has been. So Tony visits his mother at the nursing home, and he brought her macaroons. Delicious. And again, her being a very mean lady tells him it's too sweet. She doesn't want any, even if Tony said it's her favorite dessert place. And again, she's very ungrateful and says how awful it is there, even if Tony says it's the most expensive nursing home at Newark. And then she tries guilt-tripping him, saying how Tony and his wife and kids don't like her, and Tony tells her that's not true. This detective and Tony talk, and Tony just wants the detective to spy on Dr. Melfi, not creepy at all, and see how her life outside work is. And then at the hospital at Jackie's room, there's Tony and his crew are there, and Christopher visits, and Tony asks what happened to him, again showing he's a caring guy, and tells Tony and the guys about what happened to him and that Brandon was shot dead between the eyes. And Tony knows it was Uncle Junior. And Christopher tells him he's gonna shoot and kill Uncle Junior. But Tony stops Christopher from doing that. And Tony goes to pay a visit to Uncle Junior, and he attacks first Uncle Junior's bodyguard with, classic stapler gun, That's always a classic street move. I don't know. Then he goes to this restaurant where Uncle Junior is at, and he tells Uncle Junior he better knock it off, and that the trucks were returned, and he didn't need to do that to Christopher and Brendan. And Uncle Junior only did this because to get back at Tony. And Tony just wants to talk and get this situation squashed and move on, but Uncle Junior doesn't listen. Next, that detective tells Tony what he saw watching Dr. Melfi about her life, and how also she sees a shrink, and this shocks Tony. Is it weird? It is weird, but Tony is starting to care about the doctor, and he wants to know her better. And Tony and some of his friends have lobster. Then Tony and some of his friends have lobster at this strip club, classy, and they discuss who should be the boss. And Tony offers it to one of the guys at the table, and he denies the offer. And they all say Tony should be the boss, but Tony thinks Uncle Junior is the best choice since New York is behind him. And they all tell him Uncle Junior lives at the wrong century. Tony later on, when he's at the kitchen unpacking groceries, has a mini panic attack, and Camilla catches this and helps him up. And she tells him if he ever talks about their marriage at therapy, and Tony says he talks too much, and he says he's thinking of not going anymore. And Camilla gets offended, mad at him, and how she'll leave him if he quits therapy, because therapy is actually making their marriage go smoothly again. Tony's at therapy again, and she asks about the panic attack, and without Dr. Melfi asking, he just brings up his uncle and his mother, and how his uncle and mother are stressing him out. And Dr. Melfi says to him, they're testing him. and maybe have them think they're being at control like an illusion. Tony is at the strip club, and on the TV, that's when he finds out Jackie died, and Tony and the crew have a toast for their fallen friend, and Tony goes to the restaurant where Junior's at to talk to Uncle Junior and about how Jackie died, and they need a leader. And he tells Junior that the Sopranos have been waiting a long time for this opportunity and wants Uncle Junior to be the new leader. Again, just tricking Uncle Junior like he's the one at control. This episode is the most important episode of any Soprano episode. Oh, I got you. Now you want to find out why. Ha! Well, I'll tell you later. So it starts with Tony and Meadow visiting colleges for Meadow, and while they're driving, Meadow just asks her father, is he a part of the mafia? And asks him to tell the truth, and Tony lies and says he does illegal gambling. He doesn't want his kids to know who he truly is. He's a family man that was thrown to the bullpen and he can't get out. While they're at this gas station, Tony sees this guy he recognizes, and he freaks out and tells Meadow to get to the car. And he speeds on the road following this guy, and he speeds. And Meadow gets scared and asks him what's going on. And he can't tell her it's a mobster. So he just says it's a friend, lying to her again. And he's about to pass their motel when they're about to pass their motel when Meadow says something, and Tony reluctantly turns to the motel, and he's got to be the father right now, not the mobster. Then when they're at the motel, Tony's at the phone booth, and he calls Christopher and tells him about the mobster he saw, about that how this mobster was a rat and ruined a bunch of close friends of his. And Tony wants Christopher to find out to see who that guy's license plate is, to see if it's truly the guy Tony thinks it is. So someone rings at the door, and Camilla answers the door, and it's their local priest. And this is the first time you'll see Camilla actually get happy. So Tony and Meadow go to dinner at this restaurant, and Tony says how he's proud of her, and Tony asks if Anthony knows, and Meadow says he probably does. And that's when Tony tries having excuses why it's a good thing he's a part of the mob. And then Meadow tells him how she did speed, and asks her why she told him this. And she said he was honest, so she was going to be honest to him. So Camilla and the priest are speaking and talking and drinking that good red wine. And Camilla is smiling the whole time because she's generally happy being with him. Christopher calls and tells Tony about it's the mobster Tony thought it was, Dr. Melfi. Then, back at the house, Dr. Melfi calls and Camilla answers, and Camilla gets hurt because Tony said the therapist was a man, and she right away jumps to the equation that Tony must be cheating on her because she's been hurt by Tony before. The priest tells her it's probably not that, and she doesn't listen. She thought therapy was helping change to the nice man she knew before. Now she thinks it's the total opposite, and she can't understand why he lied to her about this. Then Tony stalks this monster and sees that he has a family, finding out where he works and operates. And while Tony stalks and prays, the mobster hears something outside, and he gets severely paranoid and is looking who's after him because he thinks there's someone after him. Say that twice fast. That is a tongue twister, or I'm just illiterate and can't talk. So after the priest gets done eating, he's about to leave, and Camilla doesn't want him to leave because she's hurt by Tony again. And the priest is her comfort right now. That priest right now is talking to her with respect and kindness that that all she wants from Tony. She can't get. Camilla confesses her sins to the priest, mostly of her guilt and shame, and how she thought she could change Tony. That's why she still stays with him. She thinks she can find the Tony she knew before. Camilla is about to cheat on Tony with the priest until the priest ruins the mood like they always do by having to puke. And she calls Tony to check on him and forgive him, but she's silent as he picks up, and she just hangs up on him, saying nothing to him. Tony drops off Meadow at this college and he's about to pay a visit to that rat mobster. And this is when Sopranos changed forever. We were used to Tony being that classic mafia member, but we've never seen him kill anybody. And we learned why people outside the family are scared of hearing that name, Tony Soprano. He prays and catches the rat, and it's a great scene because it's like a horror scene. The rat mobster knows Tony's out there somewhere watching him, and he's paranoid and makes it worse for him because at any corner Tony can jump out and attack him, and Tony sneaks attack the rat mobster by choking him with a wire. And the mobster begs he's got a family, and he won't say anything, and Tony doesn't care. Tony knows he's got a kid and a wife, but he's not sorry for the rat. When Tony plays the mobster role, he really plays it well, and he kills the first victim of many to come. And then Tony gets back to acting like the lovable father after that killing. Like, to him, it was roadkill. Oh well. So Tony and Meadow go back home, and Camilla greets Meadow and stays very cold to Tony, and she admits to him and tells him the truth that the priest stayed at the house overnight. And Tony can't understand what she's saying. He gets offended because he thinks she cheated on him, and she tells him nothing happened. But he can't understand it, being very hypocritical himself because he cheats on her all the time, even if he does cheat on her because of his mother, since he never had a mother that cared for him, and he's missing that affection and caring from a female. He cheats to find that. This episode was all about being honest. If you tell the truth, you'll feel better. You can move on. If you keep on lying to yourself and to others, it'll get stressful and just crumble on top of you. So it starts with Tony and the detective meeting up, and the detective tells more about what Dr. Melfi does when she's not at work. So when Tony goes to Dr. Melfi, he now brings her coffee. He's starting to warm up to her. And Dr. Melfi tells him that he's choosing an Italian doctor is like him coming clean. It's like he's dialoguing to his wife and daughter. So Tony asks her why she chose him as a patient, since she knows he's a mobster, and she can't answer. So Junior and Tony's mother speak at the nursing home, and she tells him to not be taken advantage of since he's boss, and he's just another clueless, gullible man falling for the old tricks. Then Tony is visiting one of his side hoes, and she goes down on him, but the Piggy Wiggly's not working. So he just asks her how her work is doing, and she thinks this is strange, and she ignores the question. And right there, Tony realizes this girl doesn't care about him at all. She only cares about getting sex from him. And again, Tony cheats because he's trying to find that affection and care his mother didn't have. So he gets annoyed and leaves before the crazy Saito throws a candle at him. Next, Hirsch and Tony talk, and Hirsch says how Tony's father was fair and how Junior isn't, and tells Tony Junior is taxing him. And this really pisses off Tony because Junior only did this to Hirsch because Tony's mother wants to get back at Tony for putting him at the nursing home. Another tongue twister. Jeez. Tony is at this Tony is at this restaurant and talks to one of his business guys about what the plan will be to have Hirsch not pay that much for taxes. He goes back to the table where Camilla is. She's still cold to Tony. She's mad that he is not really paying attention to her on their anniversary. And he tries apologizing, but she's not having it this time. So when they go back home, Camilla tells him that he's not the same guy she knew, and she can't stand it. And again, Tony's excuse is the pills he's taking. Tony is back seeing Dr. Melfi, and he tells her about the limp wood he's got, and he thinks it's from the pills. And she says that him not being able to get hard might not be because of the pills, but could be something like a mental problem. So Tony and his businessman Hirsch and Uncle Junior speak about the tax problem, and they come to terms of lowering the price of the tax, and Uncle Junior has no idea Tony is actually running things. And Tony has another sexual dream of Dr. Melfi, and it freaks him out when he wakes up. And then when he sees his side hoe, he just asks her if she could wear something like a business suit like Dr. Melfi. Tony and Dr. Melfi speak, and he tells her about how he asked the side hoe, but he names Camilla, on how he would like her to dress like a businesswoman when they do it. And Dr. Melfi asks him what he means by this. And he says, like, dress like Dr. Melfi. And then Tony starts calling Dr. Melfi, she's gentle, not loud, sweet, sounding like a mandolin. Man, Tony's good with his words. And then gets up and tries kissing her, but she rejects him. So people at the crime family aren't happy, and they meet up with Tony to talk about how Uncle Junior is ruining things, and they're getting sick of it, and how they blame Tony for creating a Frankenstein. Then Camilla visits the priest, and she tells him how at first she accepted Tony cheating on her with other girls, and how to her it was alright because she couldn't always satisfy him, and how now with this therapist she's actually thinking it as cheating, and she's getting jealous, hurt, and she's thinking of getting a divorce. And the priest really guilt trips her, saying how divorce is weak, and how getting a divorce is weak, and just pray and hopefully it gets better. Camilla is really so mentally hurt. She has other people control her without truly knowing it. Tony and Dr. Melfi talk again, and she wants to speak about that kiss attempt, and he tells her how he loves her, and how it's not the pills, it's about her. He dreams about her and thinks about her. And she tells him it's progress. She tells him he's made this love for her because of all the care and affection she's given, because the lack of it from mostly his mother. And he gets offended and lashes out at her again, because he can't understand rejection and admit his mother never gave him those things. So Tony and Camilla talk, and he tells her that there's nothing going on with the therapist, and she tells him she was jealous because of all the doctor was helping him, and had guilt of how she couldn't help her own husband. Then there's a meeting with the crime family, and there's a FBI spy. They're taking pictures. The FBI are now after the Sopranos and the crime family. Anthony and his friends steal wine from the church and the school. It's a Catholic school. And they're just wasted and drunk during gym class. So Tony and Carmilla are at the principal's office, and they tell him that Anthony might have ADHD. And Tony gets offensive over this, about how they probably chose to lecture Anthony because of his last name, Soprano. Then they have a family dinner, and his mother and Uncle Junior start talking about how when Tony was young, he was the same way, getting into trouble. And Tony has this look and tells them not to speak about that again, because Tony is starting to see his younger self with his son Anthony, and he's starting to get he's starting to get regret because of it. Tony is speaking to Dr. Melfi, and at first he's very defensive about how he thinks it's hypocritical that the experts say that he should still punish their son, and he thinks it's strange since they think he has a disease. And then Dr. Melfi says that he doesn't think Anthony was acting differently, and Tony says no. And then she asks him if Tony sees his behavior as his reflection of him, and Tony just says to her that he'll find a way to figure it out. Then after that, Dr. Melfi brings up that Tony said he had feelings for her, and he says he loved her, and she asks how is it going with that, and he gets defensive and says that he can't turn off his emotion for her just because of therapy, and Dr. Melfi says she never asked for that. Then, since he's still hurt by her rejection, he wants to make her jealous and tells her that he has this hot girlfriend who's 24 to just rub it to her face because he's hurt and still can't acknowledge how he was rejected by a girl. Then Tony wakes up the next morning because of yelling between Carmela and Anthony Jr., and he gets up and goes to the bathroom, and he takes his Prozac pills and looks at himself in the mirror, and we get our first flashback of many of young Tony when he was a kid, and he misses the bus. And then he witnesses what his father actually does for a living, as he sees a man running away from his father, and how his father catches up with the help of young Uncle Junior, beats up the poor guy because he didn't pay the father back. Dr. Melfi and Tony have another therapy session, and he talks about how he remembered a memory of his father, of how he witnessed his father whack someone, and she asked him why he thought of that, and he thinks it's because of the Anthony situation. Then Dr. Melfi asked him how he thought about his father being a monster, being a mobster, and he can't answer that question except when she asked him if Tony is scared if Anthony finds out who his father truly is, and he gets very defensive and he tries dodging the question by saying random things that don't connect to what she asked. Then Tony and Carmela speak about how Anthony is now at special ed, and Carmela says she blames herself, and Tony again gets mad and tells her what she blames him for what happened to Anthony, and Carmela wasn't even talking about Tony, but Tony blames himself so much that he brings the situation to be about him. Then Anthony goes to visit his grandmother at the nursing home, and he tells her about how he had to see a psychologist, and she can't understand that. And since she's an old boomer, gets offensive very easily, and says that that's a Jew thing because she's a racist. And then Anthony tells her Tony goes to a psychologist, and she can't believe it. And then, just like Tony, brings the situation to be about her and says how Tony probably talks mad shit about her. I mean, do you blame him if he does? Tony and Dr. Melfi talks, and he talks about how this whole Anthony situation is stressful, and he's worried about what Anthony knows and what he doesn't know about him, and how he thinks this ADHD thing is genetics. And then he brings up how Pussy, one of his workers, is a stone-cold mobster who has 3 successful kids who love him. And then Dr. Melfi asks if he blames his father for how he is now. Tony says sometimes, and Tony admits he wonders what his life would be if his father wasn't part of the mafia, and probably how normal his life would be. Then she asks him to talk about his father, and we get another flashback. And Tony asks young Tony asks if he can go with his dad and sister. And the father says no, and to help his mother. And he says how his mother was at the house, and how he asked his mother if he can get this one item. And his mother starts to have a breakdown and tells him how his sister's better than him, and he yells back. And his mother threatens to stab him in the eye. And the therapist, Dr. Melfi, is clearly shocked. But again, Tony defends her, saying she was always stressed. So young Tony sneaks to the back of the car and to the trunk. And again, his father and his sister go to the car, and they drive to this place. And Tony looks, and it's the local fair. And young Tony is hurt by this, and Tony tells Dr. Melfi how it broke his heart. And Dr. Melfi said his father was showing favoritism. And she asked him how this is similar to the Anthony situation. And he says this is when he learned who his father truly was. His father brought the daughter to the fair as a distraction, where his father and his crew brought their kids to the fair as distractions for their organized crimes. So people at the fair wouldn't think anything suspicious. Even as a kid, he had no one who truly cared about him. Dr. Melfi doesn't say anything, and Tony gets defensive again and says how she'll probably say how horrible his father was and stuff. And he says how proud of his father. And he says how proud he was of his father and how he told people at school about how his father beat that guy up. And Dr. Melfi says, does he think that's how Anthony thinks of him? And Tony says, probably yeah. And now he's glad if his son's proud of him. And Dr. Melfi asked if Tony ever said this to his son. And Tony said no. And Tony said, what does it matter? She told him it's... And he says, what does it matter? She told him it's in the blood. It's hereditary. Dr. Melfi says it's genetic predispositions are only that. It's not destiny. It's the people's choice. And Tony doesn't think like that. He says to her, you're born to this shit. You are what you are. Christopher has a dream of the dead man he shot and killed on episode 1. And the dead victim is telling how he messed up and drops 3 bullets on the counter and says to him, 3 bullets, 1 on the table, 2 in his head. Then Christopher wakes up. Now Tony and his family and Christopher and the other guys are at the wedding, and one of the guys tells Tony and the other guys about the indictments, and they ask what Uncle Junior thinks they should do, and he doesn't take it serious, and that it's just speculation. The others think they should hide out, and Uncle says how they can't close shop, and then Tony tells Uncle Junior to tell the guys they need to do some spring cleaning. And Tony and the guys leave, and Tony and the family go home, and Carmela and Tony look at their hiding spots, and they take out money, guns, and hide them before the agents get to their houses. But then there's Christopher, who doesn't have to worry about it. He just writes his script, even if he can't spell for shit. I mean, really? You spell dead, D-A-E-D? I mean, Christopher, really? And Adriana tells him, shouldn't he get rid of evidence? And he tells her he travels lightly. And she points out he stole that laptop he's using now. So then on the TV on Channel 6, Tony and the rest of the crew watch as the news tells there's going to be investigations on mobster activity with indictments, and Christopher gets annoyed. His name was not mentioned on the news. We get how people outside the mob think of him. With Dr. Melfi and her family have dinner, and they speak about how she should drop Soprano as her patient, and she defends him. And then her ex-husband speak about how the mob is ruining the reputation of Italian Americans. Then there's the son that says mob movies are an icon to American culture. Tony and the crew are at the headquarters at the strip club, and Tony calls Christopher to get Italian desserts at the deli. So Christopher goes to the deli, and he's already annoyed from what happened on the news. And when he goes there, the worker is being rude to Christopher, so Christopher tells the customer to get out, and he points a gun at the worker and threatens to shoot the worker. And Christopher asks for respect. And if you have a gun pointed at you, you're going to do what they say. And the worker then gets the desserts for Christopher, and Christopher shoots his foot and leaves. And he's only acting like this because his name was not mentioned on the news about the indictments. Tony is outside the nursing home while while Carmilla goes to visit Tony's mother to get her out of her room. And when they leave, Tony goes to her room and puts their illegal money and guns at her room, but he puts them at secret departments. So Paulie goes to Christopher's apartment to hang out and go out, but Christopher doesn't want to go. So Paulie asks him what's going on. And Christopher tells him about how he's been working so hard on this script and only has 19 pages. And he asks Paulie, do you ever feel like you're going nowhere? And Paulie says to him, yeah, but who cares? He's alive still. And Christopher tells him about this famous characters. And Christopher then tells him about these famous characters and how they have an arc, and how Christopher has nothing. He's a nobody and has no identity. Christopher picks up Tony, and as soon as Tony sits down on the car seat, he slaps Christopher at the back of his head and yells at him about the stupidity of shooting that guy's foot during this stressful time. And then we see the caring side of Tony, where he listens to Christopher talk about his problems, and Tony suggests he might be depressed. Then at the end, Christopher goes to the newspaper stand outside a curb, and he picks up one of the newspaper, and he sees his name on the and he sees his name a part of the indictment thing, and he smiles. To Christopher, he finally has a purpose. It starts out with a soccer game with Metal as the goalie on the soccer team, and they win the game. And Tony and his crew bring the soccer coach to the strip club, and they have a good time. And then Uncle Junior and his bodyguard are at his lawyer's office, and they're talking about the outcome of this indictment investigation. And then Uncle Junior's bodyguard and Junior are taking a piss together, just a friendly thing to do. And the bodyguard tricks and manipulates Junior that Tony might be suspicious of the crime family. Then Meadow and her soccer teammates are hanging out at this park, and they don't know where Amy is at, another soccer team member. And Meadow and another teammate find her cutting herself on the bench. I mean, it's a serious thing, but I mean, it was funny because who cuts themselves at public? I mean, Tony and Dr. Murphy talk, and he talked about that one soccer member cutting themselves, and how Tony doesn't know what he should do. And Tony doesn't know what he would do if Meadow cut herself. And Dr. Melfi suggests that maybe Amy cut herself for a cry of help. And as soon as that girl cuts herself, the coach is leaving the team to go to another team and another state. I mean, that's sure suspicious. Like his past is coming to get him. And Tony is not having it, and he has his men try to bribe the coach to stay, and it doesn't work. So Uncle Junior and his side hoe go to Florida to get away from this trouble issue. And his side hoe asks him why he's ashamed, YouTube, don't ding me, eating her roast beef. And he tells her how he's scared if the guys find out, how they would judge him. And he tells her a saying, if you suck pussy, you'll suck anything. He's insecure with himself, mostly how men are very insecure about themselves. So later on, Meadow tells Tony and Carmilla about how Amy and the coach have been having sex. And it's very creepy and gross because she's underage. And Tony is disgusted by hearing this. And he's angry he treated this coach as his own friend. And he's disgusted with himself for treating the coach like a friend. So Tony tells the guys about the coach situation, and they tell them he needs to kill the coach, and Tony reassures them that the coach will never do it again. Tony tells Dr. Murphy about the coach situation, and she tells him that if he tells her anything about harming this guy, she'll have to tell the authorities. And she asks him, why does he have to deal with the coach? and tells him again, why does Tony Soprano got to be the one to set things right? Even if you want to be the one to solve the issue, you can't always be the world's sheriff. Tony later on looks at the phone and thinks for a while, for a very long time, and he has the conclusion and tells Silvio not to clip the coach. That means kill. That's the Italian slang. Later on, the news is showing the coach being arrested. Tony gives a gift to his neighbor because of recommending him to Dr. Melfi. And the neighbor invites him to the golf club. And after Christopher brought Adriana to Broadway because of the score they scored earlier. Dang, another tongue twister. They're at this burger joint, and Christopher's being impatient there, and one of the guys invites Christopher and to this party. While at the party, the man with the blue hat wants to talk business with Christopher, and the blue hat man says about how Hirsch was a record producer for lots of artists, and that Jimmy, who was a black singer, died, and that Hirsch is one of the white producers who stole royalties from the black artists, and claims Hirsch owns Jimmy's mother the royalty money. Adriana asks Christopher if the blue hat guy would agree to sign a band who she knows, the artist, where she knows the artist. Then Hatman and Hirsch, with Tony, Christopher, and Paulie there with him, meet and talk about the royalties. And it doesn't go well, where Hirsch and the hat guy don't come to terms. Then Dr. Melfi is having dinner with Tony's neighbor and some of the neighbor's friends. And they're talking about Sopranos, and people outside the mafia aren't really scared of the mafia. They think of them as like fictional icons, and think of them from movies like Goodfellas and The Godfather. Then at this club, Adriana's friend's band is playing, and the hat guy agrees to let the band play at their recording space because he really likes Adriana and wants to get into her pants. Then Dr. Melfi gets tired of them talking about the mobsters, and she asked to go to the bathroom. But when she goes, she doesn't go, but she looks at the window that shows the Sopranos' house, the side of it. And she hears Tony screaming. Next, Tony is at the therapist's office and speaks to Dr. Melfi, and he tells how his wife Carmilla wants him to make more friends, but he doesn't want to. He thinks that average white men are annoying and boring, and Tony hangs out with his Italian crew because they listen to him, but that's only because he's a soprano. Tony is a sad man that can't meet people. Tony is a sad man that can't meet people outside his circle. Hirsch is at his office, and he has whiskey in his hand and has guilt looking at the records on the wall. Then at the recording booth, the band plays, and the engineer doesn't think they're that great, and Christopher wants them to sound perfect because right now Christopher has a purpose. Tony plays golf with the neighbor and his friends, and the whole time the friends keep on asking Tony mafia questions. They don't even care about hanging out with Tony. They're hanging out with him to use him, to know the mafia better. Tony talks to Dr. Melfi and tells her about a story of this kid he knew when he was younger, named Jimmy. And he told her he wasn't retarded. He just talked really strange. And Tony and his friends would hang out with this Jimmy guy to laugh at how he sounds. And Tony says how when they stopped hanging out, that Jimmy would go home and cry. And Tony said he felt bad. And he said he never knew how he felt until he hung out with the neighbor and his friends to be used for someone's amusement like a dancing bear. Then it's revealed Tony is screaming because whenever he gets hurt, angry, or just embarrassed, he will work out and scream in anger. Big Pussy is at this place, playing cards with friends when the feds ruin the party and interrupt. And Big Pussy makes a move and runs out. And he gets out of breath really quickly and gets arrested. Then at the strip club, Tony, Uncle Junior, and the crew are talking about the arrest, and they make fun of Big Pussy when he arrives to the club. Then Tony's detective tells Tony that Big Pussy is wired. And Tony can't believe it, and Tony is shocked. And Tony tells him it doesn't make sense, and the detective tells him it does, and Pussy helps the feds so he wouldn't get sentenced, and embarrass his family. And the detective tells him the feds' favorite target are the ones who has a family. Tony and Carmela have a house party, and Tony asks Pussy if he could help him move this piano, and he says he can't because his back hurts. So Tony has Christopher and Polly help him move the piano, and Tony tells him to watch Pussy because he's acting strange. And then Polly tells Tony there's nothing wrong with his back. There's nothing wrong with Pussy's back. And Polly explains that Pussy visits this really good back doctor that Polly knows. And the doctor tells Polly his back is fine, nothing wrong with it. I think it's pretty sussy. Alright, I won't tell an Among Us joke. Man, that game is 2 years old, and I just made an Among Us joke. Wow, that's sad. Anyway, moving on. Then Tony visits Dr. Melfi, and Tony says how things were going so good. Now it's crashing down. And Dr. Melfi tells him, like, pending doom. And Tony asks her about if this mental stuff can cause physical problems. And Tony tells her about Pussy complaining about his back. And the doctor says it is in his head. And Tony asks for her advice. And Dr. Melfi tells him the pain might be from lots of responsibilities. And Tony thinks this makes sense. Then she says it might be because of secrets. And Tony asks her what she means, and she tells him are heavy, leading to feelings of guilt that burdens the mind. Tony and the detective are at this brothel, and Tony tells him he needs proof of this, and he won't kill a man he really cares about just because of an alcoholic cop. Then the detective tells Tony a story of how his father would have these fits and beat his mother, and the young detective would hide under his bed. Something under that bed would comfort him, kept him safe, and the detective asked Tony if sometimes he wished he would hide under the bed sometimes. Then Carmela visits Tony's mother at the nursing home, and she tells the mother to stop guilt-tripping Tony. It's stressing him out, and stop acting like the victim. Then the mother again tries guilt-tripping Carmela, but it doesn't work this time. Then Tony visits Pussy at his house, and there's Pussy on the recliner. I'm sorry, guys. That's the character's nickname, all right? That's his name. And Tony and him talk and tells him he needs to relax. And Pussy tells him things are happening. And Tony asks him what. And Pussy tells him how he's behind on things. And Tony tells him he's got options. He's got friends that can help and would die for him. And Big Pussy tells him that he knows. But he says it with fear and guilt. And Tony asks him if he needs to tell him something. And you could see the fear right on his face. And Tony tricks him by then saying how about getting coffee. And when Tony helps him get up from the recliner, Tony stares at the back of him knowing the detective is right. Tony and Polly talk at their headquarters, and Tony tells Polly how Pussy is wearing a wire. And Polly asks him if he's sure about this, and Tony says he's 90% sure. And Tony is hurt again. Another person that he was close to betrayed him. And he tells Polly that he wants Polly to be sure that Pussy is actually wearing a wire. Tony doesn't want this to be true. He drinks the whiskey as he knows this won't change anything. Polly invites Pussy to the spa space. And they're at the locker room and Pussy won't take off his clothes. And Big Pussy's excuse is how the heat of the tub is not good for him. And Polly tells him take off his clothes. It's a spa. And Pussy gets defensive and walks away. The alcoholic detective gets arrested at the brothel. And it's on the news, and this was the last straw for this depressed cop. To him, his life is over. He was embarrassed on the news. His wife is probably going to leave him. To him, he's got no purpose anymore. So he drives on this busy highway, and he gets out. And he climbs up to the top of the ledge on this bridge highway, looks down at the high height of the brown water, and he commits suicide by jumping. Tony finds out and tells Silvio how their only lead to figure out if Big Pussy is wired is forever gone. So Tony speaks to Debbie, who was at charge of this brothel, and speaks to her. And she tells him how the detective thought Tony was a man he looked up to. Now Tony has guilt of how he treated the guy, another burden on Tony. Uncle Junior visits Tony's mother, and she tells him, because she's mad at Tony, that, and just classic boomer, just play the blame game, sensitives, that 3 of Uncle Junior's capos have secret meetings behind Uncle Junior's back. This is when Uncle Junior finds out he's not the real boss. Then Jimmy wants to talk to Tony, so they talk at his basement. And Jimmy says how the feds kept asking him questions. And he keeps asking Tony where the money is. And that's when Tony realizes Jimmy is wired too. And Tony tells Silvio about this. And this is when Tony gets severely paranoid. And Tony tells Paulie, better be telling the truth, and ask him where Pussy's at. Paulie doesn't know where he's at. Then Tony asks him if Paulie is wired. And Paulie says no. Tony is realizing he truly can't trust people he thought he could. And Uncle Junior's bodyguard gets told he might get promoted. His wife asks why. Then he tells his wife it's about Tony will be going away. She asks what she means. She asks what he means. And he tells her Tony is going to be clipped. Christopher is worried about Tony and tells Silvio he thinks Tony is depressed. And we see Tony laying on his bed. The room is dark, and Carmela tells him he needs to get up and do something than staying at the bed the whole day. And he tells her his friend is missing. And she leaves. And Tony finally gets up and walks to the window and sees this pretty woman at his neighbor's backyard. Then at this old woman's funeral is Uncle Junior and his bodyguard, and the bodyguard tells him how he's got the hitmen ready. Then Tony is at the kitchen where Christopher tells him he hasn't seen Pussy anywhere. And you see the eeriness on his face. Even if Big Pussy might be wired, Tony is still worried about his old friend. And Tony then goes to the backyard and talks to that woman who is this Italian woman who sits at the neighbor's backyard, and she tells him how she's an exchange student who's studying to be a dentist. Weird. Tony is driving, and Christopher's following him to see if he's alright. And Tony stops at a donut shop, classy, and there are 2 hitmen watching Tony. But Christopher blocks their view. Then at the street alley is Uncle Junior and the bodyguard at this car, and the hitman calls the bodyguard to him. And the guy who hired the hitman calls the bodyguard to tell him they didn't kill Tony because they lost him. And Uncle Junior is annoyed, and the guy who hired the hitman talks to the bodyguard about what happened. And then he has a remark about Tony's mother, and Uncle Junior doesn't like that. And he thinks, what if they're making jokes about them? And says, what if they're making jokes about them? Because Uncle Junior is very insecure, and he orders the bodyguard to kill that guy. Tony talks to Dr. Melfi and tells her he feels nothing. He feels dread, emptiness. And she tells him what else. And he talks about this beautiful Italian woman that's at his neighbor's. And Dr. Melfi says he must be feeling something then. Then he gets defensive and he tells her how he's sick of her. He tells her how everything he touches turns to shit. He's not a husband to his wife, or not a father to his kids. Tony conveniently runs into the Italian woman and brings her to this restaurant. She talks about why hasn't he visited Italy. And Tony tells her he's been busy. And she tells him exactly where his family was from. What, she a stalker? I'm sorry, that was nah. He compliments her, listens to her. She listens to him. She talks about an Italian winery. And she talks about a church with a bell. And when it rings, a baby was born at that town. And then he has a vision of a stone living room, like medieval times, with that Italian woman sitting on a wooden rocking chair, nursing a newborn. And when the Italian woman talks to him, the depressed Tony goes away. He's happy when he speaks to the Italian woman. Carmilla and the kids have dinner with Tony's mother, and they call down Tony, and Tony walks down the stairs and he goes to the dinner table and he greets her mother, and he greets his mother, and she insults him, saying his breath stinks. And then she can't understand how he's depressed, and rambles about her father being a hardworking man who was never depressed. And she says Tony shouldn't be depressed, and he can't handle it anymore, and he walks away. Then the next day, Tony is staring at the window, staring at the Italian woman. And Carmilla asks him, who is she? And he said she's a dentist student, and he brought her out for lunch. And this set Carmilla off, ranting on how he doesn't take her to dinner. She takes care of him. For what? No reward. She says to him he's tearing the family apart. Tony then walks to the stand and asks for a newspaper and an orange juice. And as he gets to his car, the hitman walks towards him. And they can't shoot for shit. I mean, a blind person would shoot better. I mean, give Matt Murdock a gun and he would shoot better than these guys. But they shoot the glass bottle that contains the orange juice. Bye-bye, OJ. Then he gets to his car, and one of the hitman attacks Tony, and Tony takes the gun away from the guy. But the other hitman shoots that one hitman, and Tony takes down the hitman then. But he celebrates too soon as he crashes his car. Tony's at the hospital, and his family visit him to see if he's alright. And then the FBI agent talks to Tony and Carmilla about if Tony wears a wire, he'll be put on the witness protection program. Tony denies the offer, but Carmilla is mad at him for denying the offer because Carmilla tells him they could start a new life. She wants her kids to have a father, not a dead one. But Tony tells her they do have a father. It's him, Tony Soprano. He can't leave the mafia game or he'll be lost without a purpose. Then Uncle Junior and Tony's mother watch the news as they talk about the failed assassination attempt on Tony. And the mother ain't concerned. She's mad the hitman failed. And later on, Tony is back at home with Christopher, Paulie, and Silvio are there with him. And they discuss about why Uncle Junior would put the hit on him. Then Uncle Junior and Tony's mother visit Tony. And Uncle tells him how he's got men after those hitmen. But Tony knows the whole truth. Dr. Melfi is at her car, and Carmilla drops Tony off, and he goes to the car, and she asks him how he's doing with all that happened. And he tells her that he feels better now, and he talks about when he was depressed, he wanted to die. But he said how the assassination attempt scared him so much he realized he doesn't want to die. And then Tony talks about the Italian woman and tells her how he brought her out for lunch. And he says, when they were talking, he says he had a daydream of the Italian woman nursing this newborn, and tells how she was saying to the baby, "It's all right. Don't cry. I love you." And she asked Tony if the baby had a name. And he tells her the Italian woman called it Anthony. And Dr. Melfi said Tony was the baby. That Italian woman having that affection, loving care towards Tony is what Tony's mother never did. Then Tony asks the neighbor where the Italian woman is, and the neighbor tells him he doesn't know what he's talking about. That's when Tony realized she's not real. He hallucinated her. Then he asks Carmilla if she remembers the argument about the Italian woman, and she says that argument never happened. Even with Tony's hallucinations, him and Carmilla argue. Uncle Junior, Tony, and the bodyguard, Jimmy, and the other guys are talking business at the pork shop. And when they leave, Uncle Junior agrees that Jimmy is the rat, and he gives the okay to have Jimmy be killed. So Jimmy and Christopher are at the hotel, and Christopher tells Jimmy he got him a prostitute for the night. You know, it's boys' night. And Christopher and him get to this room, and they go to that room with the prostitute, and Silvio is there with a gun. And Jimmy tries grabbing his gun, but Christopher stops him, and Silvio kills the rat, Jimmy. How poetic was that? I mean, man, I should be a poet. No, I'm just very illiterate. If you're still watching this video, you know I can't speak for shit. So, by the way, thank you for sticking around. I'm sure this video is over an hour long, so thank you for that. So Tony's mother goes to Carmilla and Tony's house, but thinks it's her sister's house. She's losing her damn mind. And Tony tells Dr. Melfi this, and how the doctors think she has early Alzheimer's. And Dr. Melfi tells him, doesn't he think it's convenient that the mother has this stuff going on at the same time of his killing attempt? And Tony gets annoyed and mad and asks if she thinks his mother ordered the hit. And she brings up that the other day he imagined that Italian woman that had the care and affection his mother lacked. She says Tony's subconscious is saying something. Then the mother might have borderline personality disorder. And Tony lunges at her and yells at her. And when he walks out, Dr. Melfi locks the door. Tony can't accept that his mother never cared for him. Carmilla and Jackie's wife talk at Artie's new restaurant, and the priest is there and sits with them, and the priest and Jackie's wife talk and kind of flirts. I mean, the priest is a hoe. You know what I'm saying. And Carmilla noticed this and realizes it's the same thing how the priest treats her. Then the feds talk to Tony and talk about his luck might be over since the killing attempt, and they want him to testify. And he still denies the offer, and then they play the recordings of his mother at her room. And the recordings reveal that the mother spilled out lots of private information and was a part of the plan of the assassination attempt. And this truly breaks Tony's heart. Artie visits Tony's mother, who is at the hospital room, and they're talking and stuff. And then classic Boomer gotta spill the beans. She tells him she's shocked that Artie still talks to Tony, that Tony burnt down Artie's old restaurant. And this shocks Artie, and again hurts him, and just makes him full of rage. Tony blames himself that his mother wanted him dead, and Carmela tells him not to blame himself and that she's crazy, and Carmela tells him the Alzheimer's is probably an act. Then Tony and the crew start killing Uncle Junior's crew off. Dr. Melfi gets scared when she sees Tony at the waiting room and runs back to her office and locks the door. And Tony convinces her to let him go to her office with her. And they talk, and he tells her about his mother and that she needs to go away for a while since Uncle Junior knows Tony sees a therapist and they probably be going after her. So he needs her to go somewhere and hide. Tony doesn't want Dr. Melfi to be hurt because she's his mother figure now. Artie points a gun at Tony and asks how could he burn down his restaurant. Artie's hurt. Tony is his friend that he trusted. He's blind with sadness and rage. And Tony convinces him to stop pointing the gun at him and tells Artie that he would never, and that his mom's a crazy boomer. Not really, just saying his mom's crazy. Artie then breaks the gun because he's angry and hurt and walks away. Tony's past actions are now catching up to him. Now the indictment leads to Uncle Junior's being arrested, and Tony's angry but also relieved so he doesn't have to kill a mentor, a man he cares about. Then Tony confronts his mother to tell her he knows what she's done. And he gets the confirmation that the mother is faking all this when she smiles at him like a goddamn evil white lady. When nurses carry her away as she claims she had a stroke. Then it's pouring raining out, and Tony is driving with his family, and they tell him they won't make it to some aunt's house. So he drives to Artie's new place, so they can stay somewhere warm. And Artie at first doesn't want to let them in, but he thinks for a while, and he finally forgives Tony and lets them in, and cooks them a nice dinner, where Tony and his family finally act like a normal family, and eat together. Season 1 was about a man named Tony Soprano, who is your cliche mobster we've seen on numerous gangster movies. But this is a man who wants to prove to people he's somebody, where he takes on so many tasks, that leads to panic attacks. This is a man who wants to get his mother's approval he'll never get. He's a very sad and lonely man. This season was also about how insecurities are a poison that will consume your mind and will lead you to do impulsive and stupid decisions where your past actions will catch up to you and will crumble on top of you.